Hey guys, my name is Rai, and today I wanted to talk through a little bit about my key that I timed on my 616 item level VDH, and this was a 14 Mr. Tirna Scythe. Given that in the past couple weeks I've had a lot of friends and a couple viewers ask me, are you planning on tanking this season? My quickest response is, yeah, I'd love to tank, but I also don't do it always the traditional way. I don't really often play the meta tank, given that I've traditionally played a Brewmaster, but I do enjoy VDH for the fun of it, and I wanted to see how far I could push my limits here and my boundaries in tanking the ski. At the end of the video, I will share my talents, some extra thoughts, but for now, I'm just going to walk you through what I did in the ski. On the first pull here, given my gear, and I didn't know how much this has actually hurt me because I've never tanked a key on my VDH at this level before, especially at this gear, I did call for pain suppression on the gather. I tagged the big tree with my fiery brand, and I went right into meta. I think one of the biggest things, and I think a lot of Demon Hunters that have either played the game or if you've tanked, you know that there's a lot of damage this pull, but it's mostly due to the soul cleavers, and I'll talk about that as we get into the next pack as well. But making sure you kind of pop a lot here on the gather is really, really helpful into making sure that you can live this entire pull and actually get things back for the next pull as well. I am running and playing Felscarred. As a choice here, I do think Felscarred versus Eldrazi Reaver at low item levels and low gear levels does help you live some of these crazy pulls for the duration of how you are in meta. However, I think this is a very good dungeon for Eldrazi Reaver as well, but again, given my gear, given that I only have 20% haste, and I don't have a lot of scaling yet, I did choose to play Felscarred for this dungeon. As you can see, before I go to the next pack, I do grab my mushroom, and given my current situation, I choose to break up this pack into two. So you can see I open with brand, and I think I run spikes in my my Feldev as well before I brand. So my Feldev falls, and I start rolling fiery brand on targets. At this point, I'm also kind of calling kicks and making sure that we get some CC out. When you're fighting these mobs, especially at the start of the dungeon, the biggest thing you have to worry about is these soul cleavers. If you don't have any sort of defensive running through it, whether it be Feldev, Brand, Metamorphosis, or an external, Spikes is really not enough to kind of keep you through their melees and their debuffs. So once you're kind of out of things, I would suggest actually kiting this pack, and I think I end up doing that here. My Druid did put in a very unfortunate Typhoon, which carried me out of my fire sigil, so I'm just proxy kiting at this point. I do not want to get hit by these things, especially with no spikes up. As you can see, I took one melee there and it almost dropped me. Kind of the reason why I'm also holding this out too is I'm waiting for meta. I didn't want to chain these mobs in until I got Metamorphosis. I do find the bow breakers and the soul cleavers together are pretty difficult on VDH, given that you kind of have a half-life around your defensives even if you're playing pretty well. You need things to be able to help cover you in times of downtime when you either don't have spikes, don't have brand, don't have Feldev, and you're out of meta. With playing Felscarred, I find that meta carries you pretty hard for the duration of the damage that you deal. So in a lot of these pulls and mists, this actually worked out really, really well, as you'll see later in the video. On almost every pull, I'm able to run both brand and Feldev and alternate Metamorphosis when we get to the Guardian packs. I think a big mistake that I see when I'm watching or playing with other VDHs right now is that a lot of them still do what they did in Dragonflight, which was, no matter what you did, you could probably live most packs, right? You'd get brand rolling, you'd be in Feldev. I am playing Dark Glare Boon in this, so I do have short Feldev. And this results me to, be kind of immortal when I am in Feldev or when I'm playing with brand, but when I'm out, and as you can see right now, my spikes fell, I don't have Feldev, and I called for a pain suppression. And the reason why is, again, at my current gear, I don't have a lot of tools, a lot of haste, a lot of parry to kind of RNG out a lot of good luck on Demon Hunter. So I'm playing super conservatively and making sure that with my Disc Priest here, I'm communicating like, hey, I'm going to have to press spikes and Feldev here to kind of overlap a lot of the damage to survive like Soul Cleavers or Guardians. So I need those pain suppressions stat when I don't have them. I think a big mistake that some VDHs do right now is they actually spend a lot of their globals of spikes in Feldev or meta while you should be trying to kind of spread them out. But most importantly, this class all revolves around kind of alternating and making sure that you're rotating your brand and your Feldev, and you can survive most things. Another thing that I have an issue with Felscarred right now is that I find a lot of people, even when I'm watching some keys, and one issue when I was coaching a couple weeks ago, is that they like to do the whole, I'm going to press meta, I'm going to press brand, and front load all my damage and do a ton of damage in the opener, and then they end up flopping after. So I think if you're having problems living on VDH right now, one of the things that you should be trying to consider doing is spreading out and spacing out your brand and your Metamorphosis. As you can see here, my brand's down. I'm not in Feldev. My spikes are about to fall, but I'm trying to hold on to meta for as long as possible because I do want it for the burn. Metamorphosis is a ton of damage in Felscarred, so I want to make sure that, you know, if we can try to 1 or 2 phase the burn, that I'm running meta at least for the latter half of it. Here I do get my Feldev back, I get a Flame Sigil out, I kick, and I'm about to be back in Fiery Brand, which means that I'm going to be pretty sturdy for a minute. I do drop pretty low there, but as you can see, I pop my meta, and we start doing the burn. I do find right now the current state of Demon Hunter is a lot different, and having played to the title level on multiple tank specs, including Brewmaster and Demon Hunter, you know, 2 of the more traditionally difficult tanks, I do find that the biggest thing that I lack right now is just, you know, consistent self-healing and the ability to parry. Demon Hunter's always been a pretty hard parry tank, and, you know, you can kind of get RNG'd out of existence, but again, the whole point of this video is to walk you through that even though you might not necessarily have a lot of gear, it is possible to overcome some of these adversities with good planning, good communication with your team, and more importantly, good gameplay. Here's the interesting part of the fight here. I think I do end up calling for pain suppression if I remember correctly. So I've run my brand, and now the boss is at 53%. I think, overlap my Feldev here with my brand, just to make sure that I'm topped. And I think I roll spikes as well. And the reason why is there's some magic damage going out right now. I need to move, and I'm getting hit in the back, and I think I end up getting hit by a swirly. So again, right now, this boss can kind of be difficult as I'm calling kicks, making sure I do everything. And traditionally, it's not like a very hard-hitting boss, but don't be afraid to, you know, use some of your defensives to make sure you can get through this fight. I know a lot of you are going to want to save, you know, brand and meta just for the burn, but ultimately what's important is you living, right? I think the biggest difference now in terms of tanking as it was compared to Dragonflight is Dragonflight was very damage focused, where tanks would run damage trinkets, you would go for max damage builds, and you didn't really have a problem surviving. I would try to move away from that thought right now and at least focus on making sure that you can live before you move up key levels. Again, I jumped here from an 11 mists to a 14, so I'm trying my best to figure this out on my own, but tanking does feel a lot different now. As you can see, my Boomkin actually goes and senses treason, and we're going to be getting the guys on the right-hand side. This is a pretty tough pack, because we do have 2 defenders. I think it's been 3 defenders and a guardian. I do roll brand early to make sure that these tag everything coming in, but I do make a mistake here, and my Arcane Mage actually ends up getting meleeed. One thing that I should have done here is I should have saved my brand for a second, and I should have gone to meta a little bit earlier and used my both Elysian Decree and my Flame Sigil on all those mobs that came in. Right now, again, I'm in Metamorphosis, so I'm pretty immortal, but my brand's just run out. I do have a shelf life on how long I could live. My meta is going to end here, and because I am playing Felscarred, I get a free Feldev right at the end of my meta. Again, so after this, I'm making sure that I'm rolling both spikes and Feldev in meta. I think I'm going to dark myself here, if I remember correctly. And this is where I'm super dry, right? So I'm relying on darkness, I'm relying on demon spikes, and currently I have no charges of pain suppression, so I do call for my elemental shaman to drop his Earth Elemental. There's a good chance there that I could have just gotten RNG parried out and just died, but I do manage to survive with some good luck and some good teamwork. The Double Defender Stalker Stinger pack isn't necessarily hard for me, but it is hard for my team. So even though I don't have Metamorphosis up, it's pretty easy to open with Feldev, start rolling my brand, make sure that my Immolation Aura is running, and make sure I make good use out of my Demon Surge procs for both self-defensiveness with my Leech, and for my Frailty, and for my damage. I'm going to have a lull here where my spikes drop in a second, and I end up taking a lot of damage. I have no pain suppressions available for me, but as you can see too, I did run out of health pots in the bottom right corner on my Shift C that I forgot to buy before the ski, so that would have been a place where I probably would have health potted. So I had no Flame Sigil, no spikes, but I did get my Feldev back in a second. Another issue I find with these packs personally is the charges. So the issue with these packs is it's very hard to build Frailty on these mobs, given that they're charging around. So I would advise not jumping towards them, but making sure, especially when they're jumping out, you have something like a Flame Sigil rolling on them, and you have spikes for when they come back in, because you're going to get hit harder than you normally otherwise would. Again, I made sure that I saved a set of spikes there for the end. especially when mobs are jumping out and you're not getting hit that hard. You can kind of game spikes and make sure that you're actually saving them for when mobs are coming back in on you. A lot of these opening mobs here in the maze, I would suggest going in with either Feldev and spikes or Brand right away. I think pulling a pack without Feldev at this item level is kind of scary, and I think, like, especially with Felscarred, it makes it really nice for the gather as you try to get frailty up on mobs. There's nothing too special about this dragon. I do get really, really lucky, and I think I parry every single one of his tank busters, making me kind of immortal here. I would suggest when you're fighting this guy or you're fighting the poison monster to make sure that you at least keep something up for every tank buster. Again, I did get really, really lucky with my RNG. I did call for paints up on one. As you can see here, like, even the melees, I'm kind of getting shredded on. I parry again there, but ultimately I did call for pain suppression just in case. As you can see in the top right hand corner, it's just wearing off. Because if you do take that tank buster raw, especially on this key level at my gear, I think I might have perished. I opted there not to hit Feldev and not to hit Brand because I wanted to RNG, good fortune. I really want all those buttons going in the next pack. If you're not pressed on time, especially on Demon Hunter, and you're about to go into a big pull, it's completely okay to like hold off a second, buy a couple seconds, and make sure you're not leaping to a pack with nothing. I find a lot of Demon Hunters I've watched in the past, or I've coached, or even when I'm playing the game, if I go into a pack completely natty with no spikes, no Feldev, it's very easy to flop in the first global. So kind of what my opener is, you'll see a lot of the time, is I'll put a Flame Sigil down, I'll hit spikes, I'll hit Immo Aura, and then I'll Feldev as soon as I can. The big thing is you just want that extra armor, right? Like if I didn't have Feldev there, I think I just would have died on the opener. This is a pretty difficult pack for me, but I do start the pack instead of opening with meta. I do opt to start it with Brand. As you can see, I'm rolling spikes here as much as I can. My Brand's rolling for 4 more seconds, all on all 5 targets. And then as soon as that Brand is fading, I go into Metamorphosis. I do miss my kick there, I think, and that goes off, but we do have a Priest Master spell. And right now, because I am in Metamorphosis and I get an additional Fel Devastation reset in Felscarred outside of my meta, I am rolling spikes in meta. I would only roll them as much as I'm rolling them right here on these packs, knowing if you have Metamorphosis up and you still have that free Feldev. Because as you can see right here, my Feldev fell, my spikes fell, I get another charge here, but I did call for mass barriers, or sorry, Power Word Barrier for my team. My healer knew, and obviously he's in communication with me here, so he knows like when I'm pretty weak, and he has healed me before, so it did help me a lot in this key. I found on Demon Hunter too, it's very good to communicate. It's very easy to make a mistake by hitting like spikes or using something overlapping where you shouldn't. But thing is, you either have to kite, own your mistakes, or be creative, like with things like darkness, health bot, just kite meta or what. So this pack is kind of funny. I looked at the timer, I looked at my team and said, look, this is the double guardian pull. I personally think I will die if I don't have Metamorphosis at some point within this pull. However, we are sitting on PI. I believe we have a charge from Incarn from our Boomkin D-Wilks. P-Wave does have Ascendance, and our Arcane Mage does have Surge and Spy Master. So I say fuck it. I have a Feldev reset. I'm going to go ahead and pull. I'm going to pull right away with Feldev. I roll my Brand immediately because I need that Brand to start spreading. I am watching my Priest right now, and I recognize that I have no charges of Pain Sup. I have no Mass Barrier. Sorry, Powered Barrier. So this is all on me. But all I have to do is make it another 7 seconds to my meta. What's kind of funny at the very end of this pack, though, my Mage actually pulls Threat. He actually did so much damage to one of the Guardians with the 40 stack Spy Masters that he did bearish. The pack died so quickly, I almost didn't have to use meta, but this Guardian live at the end, as you could see, I would have absolutely died if I did not hit meta when I did. So again, especially before a boss fight like this, I know that we're going boss next because of our maze. I would just hit everything, right? Don't be greedy, don't hold. Never let yourself have downtime on Double Guardian. And if you do have downtime on Double Guardian, you're probably dead if you don't have an external. in the short amount of keys I've done this season, I do find it rather difficult to play with Restoration Shaman on VDH. And the reason why is I do think, especially lower gear, in the build I'm playing, and in most builds, unless you're playing AR with extended spikes and feed the demon, that you're going to run into an issue of gaps. Even with me right now having 1 point in extended spikes and 1 point in feed, as you can see, I do have gaps because I do not have a lot of haste to be able to spend on my souls. There's nothing really too special about this fight, so I can kind of let you guys just watch this, but I still do think that if you're going to be doing anything on this fight with your defensives, when you're kiting the boss towards one of the patterns, it is really nice to either have, you know, Feldev or Brand or something kind of rolling. As you can see, I kind of held my spikes there for a second, knowing that whenever a mob or a boss casts an ability, they can't hit me. Some can, but I know most don't. So whenever mob's casting something, you can delay your spikes as long as you want because you're not going to get meleeed. So you can actually have a lot higher uptime on demon spikes than otherwise you would have if you're just mashing it and outside of your Feldev. So there's my patty cake. I know she's casting frontal. I'm not getting meleeed. And then I think I start to roll either Brand here or Feldev. I roll my Brand right away because right now I'm not going to have full frailty on my targets, and I'm kiting. And I get a little scared there, so I decide to not only roll my Brand, but I roll meta right away too. There is AoE ticking damage. I'm getting hit in the back as I kind of move. And I'm kind of back at it. Right, so like at this point, there's nothing really going on. I'm just kind of blasting the boss. Not doing anything crazy. Just making sure I'm spending my souls. I'm spirit bombing single target if I have enough souls active. Otherwise, I'm just soul cleaving. And again, nothing too crazy. I run dry here without my spikes in a second. And I think I go into Feldev. Oh, no. I actually greeted it because there's a cast. And there we go. There's my Feldev right after. So as you can see, single target. I'm waiting for my Feldev to fall. And I'm about to hit spikes. There it is. A trick on this boss fight too is with the Vulpin, you can actually go ahead and Demon Cage it or Misery it, and it does buy your team some time. I do hit Brand, and I'm off onto the races, onto the next pattern. Again, same thing. Mob comes out. I hit defensive when I'm dry, and we keep going. I get a little scared here, so I do hit spikes, and then I was holding my Felda, but I end up shipping it. The only thing I don't want to do at this point in the fight is I do not want to hit meta, whatever I do. So, of course, I still have Brand running, which is fine. I hit my spikes, but I want to do the next double. I know I'm looking at my DPS CDs. We have a Charge of Incarn, we have Convoke. I opened my character pin there just to show, or I think I'm looking at my haste, because I think I had a haste proc for my weapon. I wanted to see what it felt like. I do almost let myself die looking at my character pin though. I wouldn't recommend doing this. So we do have an 11.5 minutes left in the key. I know that from here, I need about 3.5 to 4 minutes for the last boss on this key level. Probably 3:45, which leaves me approximately 7-ish minutes to do all the trash. I do a 48% count to do in 7.5 minutes, which is pretty aggressive, which means I do have to do some doubles. I can't be too conservative, even with my gear. So I have to really plot out carefully here how I spend my resources and how I spend my team's resources, right? So I do cage this first guy. That back is really inefficient, and I think if you guys watch streams, you'll see that most people do skip that. You do need a cage, a sap, or a sleepwalk or something. As I group this pack, I throw glaive on the right, throw 2 glaives, and tell my team that to be really careful because I don't have a lot of threat. I do use one fire sigil, and I can burn my fire sigils here if I wanted to. I opted to only use one more and go straight into meta, because as soon as you go into metamorphosis, you're going to get 2 charges and they're going to reset. On my first fire sigil, I did make a mistake here. I accidentally used 2 in the opener, and I'm not running Ascending Flame, which means they do not stack. So I'm going to be a little bit weak here when that falls off in a second, but I am in meta, and I have Brand rolling. I have every single defensive rolling for this part of the pack, and I'm waiting for my Feldev reset. If I didn't have all my team's offensive abilities here, I would have played this pack a little bit differently. I did roll Brand and meta and Feldev and Spikes a lot right off the go, knowing that all I needed to do was live all of that damage and the pack would die. However, if you do not have a tracker for your DPS cooldowns, I would not recommend doing a pull like that and being as greedy as I was personally in that pull. I overlapped all my defensive cooldowns and I was left with almost nothing, right? So at the end of that pack, that got scary for me. We did have an Earth Elemental go out there, but that wasn't a call from me. That was my Elemental Shaman needing a personal. And I did wait for Brand here, as you could see, to get in the Reavers. So the most important thing is, again, on these pulls, I am kind of locked for time. I don't have infinite time left in this key, but again, I'm going to flop if I do not have a defensive. So I waited for Brand. Unfortunately, my Brand didn't get a sprint to everything as I wanted it to. I called for a barrier on me, and as you can see right next to my character pane, my Brand is all falling now, and I'm about to be very weak. I get Feldev back here, and I think after this, I call that I'm going to Proxy Kite. I have no buttons left. I have 1 charge of Pain Sup, but I do not want to use it right now, so I say I am out of here. And again, as a tank, no matter what tank you are, if you're playing a VDH, a prop paladin, a prop warrior, if you make a mistake, like, I don't think this is necessarily a mistake, this has a little bit to do with my gear, but if you need a kite, get out, right? Like, don't think twice about it, just start kiting if you can. These Reavers I find are really difficult just because they do dart around and sting and charge, so I did manage to live that. I did use health pot. I was a little bit lucky, but again, kite if you need though. Again, same thing here. I have Feldev, I have meta. I can be very aggressive in the grouping here, and I go into meta really early to make sure that I don't flop on the go. My team does have damage again. We do have Ascendance, we do have Arcane Surge, and we do have Incarnation. So I know that everything in this pack is going to die very quickly. I believe I was communicated to that we have some Spymaster stacks. So I start running Brand and meta at the same time. I have 5 seconds left on meta, knowing that I can still roll spikes because when my meta is done, I'm going to get another charge right off the bat of Foul Devastation. So again, here's my shelf life. I have 3 seconds, and I realize my Feldev's falling, and I'm out. At this point, I have no meta, no Brand, no Feldev, no 1 charge of spikes, and just Immo Aura and no flame sigils. So I do go over here, and I think I wait a second before I pull. But I do need to clean up a lot of trash before we're done. So the most important thing is me not flopping here. It's still very easy to just die on a couple mobs if you don't have any defensive plans. So I do enter Feldev. Again, roll Immo Aura, and I'm about to roll my Brand, I believe. Oh, I think I actually go for something different here. This was an interesting play I made, and I actually don't think it was the smartest play. I did want to hold my Brand and bring in those wasps because they're very, very deadly. But the problem is branding them in the opener means that even with Immo Aura ticking, it might not spread right away, so I might lose some value out of my Brand. I think I do end up hitting Feldev here as my Brand falls. I do. And then I'm going to be very weak here. I have no spikes. I only have a Flame Sigil and Immo Aura kind of run in. But half this pack is dead. I wait for my spikes to kind of fall. I have 5 more seconds. I say hopefully that they're almost dead. And again, this is where I'm really, really, really weak. I'm surprised I didn't call for a Pain Sup, but I did choose to Proxy Kite as our Ally Shaman did go down to a Sting overlap. I did try to Misery them to gain myself some space, but my Misery did miss because they did dart away. And again, I'm just Proxy Kiting, right? I don't want to use my meta, I don't want to use my Brand, and I don't want to use my Feldev as I'm opening up into a boss, so I want to make sure I have some buttons. So I do open with Brand and a Fire Sigil, and hit my spikes right away, and I'm just building. One technique that I do really like on this boss that I always tell my team to do is just stack up and move left. Once you get kind of stacked up and make sure all your team is in the same position, it makes it a lot easier for you to tank and your team to move as a group from the acid puddles. Again, this boss as a tank is nothing special. I vengeful retreat out for the mind link, I leap out, I leap back in. It's really, really easy on VDH and you shouldn't have a problem with it. But I still would treat this boss fairly. I wouldn't just think that this boss is a joke just because he doesn't do much to you. Make sure that you're just playing this boss like you would any other boss, right? Roll your defensives. Make sure that you're not using demon spikes in Feldev or meta unless you have a lot of time left in your metamorphosis where your spikes are going to come back. And just blast. As you can see, I get a little bit kind of dunked on there. And again, same thing. You can see the boss is casting poison. Big, big, big tip for people that are trying to pick up VDH or trying to get better at tanking. When mobs are casting at you like that, there are a lot of mobs that actually can't melee you. So it's completely okay to hold off your defensives for a second and be completely dry until about 3/4 of the way through the cast. Like bosses like this, when he hits accelerated time, I know he's not meleeing me. So I choose not to hit spikes. I choose not to hit Feldev. But again, I'm really low item level, so I have to be very, very cautious about what I do and how I react, right? On VDH, I don't have the pleasure of being something like a bear or a prot warrior or a prot paladin. If I make a mistake, my healer cannot correct me, I die. I will get 1 shot or I'll get 2 shot or I'll follow very quickly. So healing a VDH is mostly on me. Like a healer can partially top me, but especially a disc priest does not have the throughput to keep me alive through my mistakes. On VDH, I will just hit the floor. This consumption goes on for a very long time. I think my team had absolutely no damage going into this. I felt really bad for Mr. Springs here, but he does manage to keep us up. And we go into the next phase here. I think here I actually get a little bit scared. I hit my spikes. I made a mistake. I could have held those spikes for a second because he did his cast. But I know that I do have Feldev coming up. And I get panicked there. I think I hit the poison puddle, and even though I wasted entire Feldev by hitting Metamorphosis, what I was worried about was channeling the Feldev in poison, getting stuck or getting meleeed, and just dying. So I do opt to just not make that mistake and just hit Metamorphosis ASAP. The better gameplay should have been is I should have been in my Feldev station already, and then used my Metamorphosis after. It would have given me a lot more survivability time. So you can see I do hit health pot there. I was kind of scared. And right now I am rolling Brand in meta. And I chose to do that a little bit for damage, but also I know that after this point here, I'm going to be pretty okay. Again, when you're running around, running from a lot of mobs, and you can't build frailty, that's when you're weakest. And that's when you want to make sure that you have defensives. So I see the boss is almost dead, and I know that there's a problem with this, right? I do still need 7% count. We did do the one easy pack after the boss, so I have to go into the little bit harder pack. And I don't have Metamorphosis. So I'm making sure that I don't hit... Oh, I do hit the Feldev there. That's interesting. So now I have absolutely no Feldev. I will have Brand by the time I get to the pack, but I think I call that we need to wait a second to get there. My Priest does have 2 charges of Pain Soap. And then I hit a Flame Sigil. I hit MOR here after my Brand. My MOR is really late. That was also a mistake I made. My MOR should have been way earlier to get my Brand spread. And as Brand is kind of rolling here, I go into Feldev. One thing I would note too on these Staghorn packs is when you're actually tanking them and the explosion goes off, know that the explosion does hurt you too, and it's very easy to get global, so running some defensives into it are kind of nice. And there you have it. There is my 616 item level Demon Hunter versus a 14 Misted Tirna Scythe. Unfortunately, we were not in the old timer. We had that 1.5 grace. And again, too, I took it super slow knowing that. There were a lot of times I just kind of hung out and took things at my own pace, knowing that if I did die, we wouldn't time the key, but, why not? Why rush it, right? So I did want to show you guys quick the build that I did run. This was my Felscarred build. At my current gear, there are a couple choices I did make. I did run Student of the Suffering, given that it does give me mastery, which gives me armor and damage, which is a little bit more self-sustained. The things that I did personally to choose to survive this ski is I still ran Spirit Bomb, although in Felscarred you're going to run Spirit Bomb most of the time. When I'm playing Eldrazi Reaver, I prefer to play no bomb. But I did also take Soulmonger and I took Feed the Demon. My breakdown specifically for Soulmonger, I think it was only about 20% of my healing. But given that on the 4-packs I was playing more bomb focused than I was Soul Cleave, the only thing that this cost me in the entire key was my damage. I didn't lose out too much. The self healing from my Soul Cleave, if I'm not using it much on like the 4 or 5 packs, it's pretty negligible. So yeah. And then I did opt to take 1 point and Feed the Demon to increase my spike uptime. I am not running Ascending Flame, which does hurt my damage in this build a little bit too, but it's not the end of the world. And again, it's missed. There's no reason to kind of take Sigil. I think as Felscarred, you're probably always going to want to take Dark Lair Boon, and I would argue in, playing Reaver as well, you're probably going to want to take it. But again, a lot of these come down to choice notes and comfortability. As I play more Demon Hunter this season, I'll probably get a little bit more serious into, creating some different builds and, experimenting a little bit. But again, there you have it. There's how I timed my 14 Mists of Tirna Scithe on a 616 Demon Hunter. Good luck with your keys. Hopefully this was a little bit informative, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.